So overall, I had a qualitative design, looking at it from the emergent standpoint with modified grounded theory. I did a semi-structured interview in that there was a specific list of questions, but we had the variance to kind of deviate from that and say, okay, well, you brought this up, let's talk about this. Okay, well, you said that, and that sounds like a good thing, but what do you think about this over here? So really tried to get the whole picture and not just keep it to that specific script. Analysis, it was then transcribed by a professional transcriptionist, and then I went through with my research team and coded everything and found the commonalities, looked for the themes, looked for the common patterns that were existing. From there, we triangulated all of that together, so we had multiple people read through our transcripts to make sure they made sense, things were present in the manner that we thought they were, and then also transcripts were sent back to each participant, and they could read through them and say, okay, that's definitely what I said. Hey, I didn't really mean to say that. But in all honesty, only 2 of them ever got back to me with a comment. So I don't know if they actually did that or not, but at least I gave them the option. So the results from that interview of our EVP concept implementation and how it was going. One of the first things I noticed was looking for was the curricular emphasis. How was it being infused within their program? So one of the first things that came out was the faculty support. Really that everyone was sitting down and saying, we need this in our program. Not that everybody had to sit there and say, okay, all 5 of us as a faculty are going to approach this, but yes, it's an important concept. We need it to be in here and we need to start it, whether it's one person or all of us together. The second was having some type of programmatic meetings. Some were as formal as they got the infamous little orange book from Sackett. Those of you that are familiar with evidence-based practice, you've probably seen it. So taking that little orange book and really going through it, meeting by meeting, chapter at a time, just literally dissecting it step by step and seeing how it fits into your program. Whereas others just had a little more informal discussion of, yeah, you take those concepts, put it in your class, let me know how it turns out so I can progress on it for my class when it's time for that. From there, also looking at the specific concepts, how they're going to be taught, where they're going to be taught, who's going to teach them, really trying to break it down chronologically. Teaching strategy-wise, class preparation became another place that became very common between all of our participants. So one said that one of the best things that I do, or the easiest thing she said that she does, is she really stays up to date on the current literature. She has herself marked in each of the appropriate databases, so anytime new research comes out related to her topics of interest, she gets in a ding in her inbox and she can automatically go ahead and put that information into her presentation. So it's really a class preparation thing. So she's not necessarily having her students do evidence-based practice, but she teaches from an evidence-based practice. She's staying current. She's teaching all the new information. Presentation style, again, everybody kind of has their own presentation style, but really varying how they're going to deliver it depending on the topic, whether it's at the synthesis level or just a basic memorization level, really in how they present that information. And also emphasizing sometimes this is the evidence behind this special test for diagnosis or this diagnostic test. So here's the evidence behind it. You need to know why this test is better than this test. Why is an x-ray better than a tuning fork? That one's pretty obvious, but also making it an objective of all of their classes, really putting it right up front as, hey, evidence-based practice is an important part of this class. You're going to learn it. You're going to be utilizing it with all of the things that we're reviewing. Third concept was student activities, and again, follows very nicely with Bloom's taxonomy, whether you're looking at strict rote memorization or self-discovery, finding and evaluating literature, which again is those direct processes, and the clinical application piece. So it's important for athletic training as it is for other health professions because we're looking at, can they take what's in the classroom and apply it to what's going on in that clinical realm. So, a quotable. I think that most quotes need a voice, so I am going to read this to you. EVP needs to be done through the mission of the program. I want to say everyone needs to be on board, not that everyone needs it in their class, but everybody needs to be on board. If one of the missions of your program is to promote a successful clinical practice, you better be practicing evidence-based medicine. So the first part is the mission. The second part is to make sure that everyone is on board, and maybe that incorporates together. So that was definitely one of the major kind of starting points of this theme, and then we had other quotes beneath that in the publications that supported this sentiment. So discussion from here, what we got out of it. Really it kind of helped to lay the groundwork for the framework of EVP and how it's being instructed. Again, looking at those multiple layers, how things are going to build on each other, utilizing the taxonomy, applying it to those concepts, and how to infiltrate it within the classes. So again, principles to advanced skills, looking at articles, identifying the important components. Also, sequential implementation should combine with objectives. From an educational perspective, that makes perfect sense to us. Students don't necessarily see it that way. We're like, why didn't you just tell me all that on day one? Well, because you would have forgotten 75% of it and thought that I was crazy. So build it, very tiny little things in a sequential order, making sure that it's longitudinally within the curriculum so that they're getting it. Well, hopefully they're getting it. So within that, we also need to try to make sure that not only are they teaching it, but they're teaching it effectively. They're utilizing these teaching methods. So that was kind of the next segue, if you will, of my research that I'm not going to necessarily talk about today. But once I had all this information, I wanted to come up with a teaching method, evaluate its effectiveness, and I ended up doing that on our national level. And we did develop a process, a method that is being utilized right now in several places. Another thing is early curricular emphasis. We're seeing this right now with our senior class. As we've tried to infiltrate these things in the last couple of years, we've really noticed that those kids aren't getting it because we tried to just throw it at them at the last second. Our sophomores have a much better grasp of it because they've already had it sequentially in there since their freshman year. Current competencies, so the competencies that were held to accreditation-wise, those involve critical thinking, clinical skill development, and research. They do have specific EVP components that we will start to have to implement, everyone will have to starting next year. So again, really trying to take some of this information that we learned from these educators and get it out to the rest of the educators within the country so they can start to have an easier time to implement it and not start from ground zero. If you've been to my office, you know this is true. All right, so that brings us to our second component, the barriers. So looking at our educators and what kind of barriers they encountered both clinically and teaching-wise, because we did have some educators that were split positions between doing clinical work and instructional aspects. So the purpose of this, to evaluate the perceived barriers as well as their strategies. So somebody was saying to me this weekend, there's more than 1,000 ways to skin a cat. Why you would really want to skin a cat, I don't know, but the bottom line is there's more than one way to do it. So lots of barriers, lots of ways to overcome that. Participants were exactly the same, just a different line of questioning within the same interview. Same exact methodology was utilized. Results. What we're looking at with these barriers initially was I wanted to find out why they felt EVP was important within our profession. One of the first things that came out was respect. Okay, athletic training right now, just in the fact that our government won't even recognize athletic training and say that we're capable of being reimbursed for our services, we're classified under the technician category. That tells us that we're not being as respected as we should be by the rest of the healthcare community. So part of that could be because we're not held accountable to anybody right now, reimbursement-wise, to an insurance company. We don't have to demonstrate to anybody but a coach that our work is effective. A lot of what we're held to right now is, can this person play on Saturday afternoon or Tuesday night basketball game, whatever the case may be. So we're throwing the kitchen sink at people. We're like, hey, you got 20 minutes? I'm going to put an ultrasound on you. I'm going to stim you. I'm going to give you an ice bag. Maybe I'll heat shock. I mean, just throwing everything we could possibly have at this person. Now that's great, but how do you figure out, if you really only have 10 minutes, which one of those is the best to do with this person in that 10-minute period? So those athletic trainers that are working in a clinic or in the industrial setting, they have a whole different level of responsibility. But that's such a small percentage of our clinical population right now that we're not able to produce the outcomes we need to demonstrate our effectiveness and earn our respect. So again, huge, huge driving force for this research that we're getting started with. Another need for EVP was to kind of expand our toolbox. Make it so that it's more than just, this is what I was taught, this is what I've always done. Give them another process to really investigate and try to help their patients.